Hello everyone! Today I'm here to do one of my favorite videos of all year, and I'm going to talk about some spooky books that are perfect to read near Halloween. I do this video every year because I just enjoy doing it, and honestly the list extends each and every year. I just love talking about books that I think are perfect to read near Halloween. I won't talk about any thrillers because I've done videos all about that before. I've done favorite thrillers to read near Halloween, all of those many things. Today I'm just going to talk about some books that are just have that spooky quality, very atmospheric, very just perfect to read near, Halloween. The first book I read last year and I was like, oh my gosh, this is just, I could see myself rereading it every Halloween, and that is Horrified by Katrina Leno. This is a young adult, would it be horror, mystery thriller? I don't know, but either way, it's perfect to read near Halloween. So in this book, we follow a character named Jane, and her and her mom are moving back to New England, where her mom was from, after her father passes away. And so they move back to kind of her grandmother's house, where she's also been passed away for quite some time. And it's a very dilapidated old house. Like, I think even, let me see if I have, yes, look at that. You can see right there, spooky enough. And it needs a lot of upkeep. So they move back there, and her mom has never really talked about her childhood before or about this house. And so Jane's like, this is just very odd. And she starts hearing things in this house, and she starts learning more about her mom's past and this town and things like that. And it's just very spooky. Like, I really enjoyed this as a YA book. I usually don't enjoy a ton of YA like horror mystery thrillers, but this one was so atmospheric. It was like New England in the fall near Halloween, had that spooky quality. So I would highly recommend it, even if you don't like YA books. That's just me. I loved it that much. Actually, a lot of these books are YA for some reason. Another book that I always recommend is Slasher Girls and Monster Boys. This is a YA horror anthology that I read years ago and really enjoyed. So this is like, I forget how many short stories are in it, but I believe it's like 12 or so. And they're all just really spooky stories. There are some that are just not the best, but there are some that are genuinely creepy, that generally gave me nightmares. I did a whole video on it. I like rated each story, and I give it also like a spooky factor, so you can check that out. But please know, with spooky stuff, I am very like low on the bar with that, like meaning that I get scared really easily. So if you're somebody that doesn't get scared really easily, it might not be the book for you. I don't know, but I enjoyed it. If you just want something kind of spooky, and like maybe you can read a story every other night leading up to Halloween, it's a great book to check out. I highly recommend it. Definitely Halloween vibes. Next up is The Devouring Gray by Christine Lynn Herman. This is another YA fantasy book, and this one is great. I haven't read the sequel. Oh my gosh, I'm horrible, but I really enjoyed the first one. It's kind of a mixture of Stranger Things, Riverdale, and Vampire Diaries. Put those all together and you'll probably have this book. So we have this town, I forget what the town is called. Four Paths, yes. And basically, there's like this brutal monster that's in Four Paths. No one's seen it, but like it's kind of at bay apparently, but it's starting to like emerge again. And so townspeople are freaking out, which is understandable. And then apparently some girl comes home that her family hasn't been home to this place in a while, and things start happening. It says the Gray, which is kind of like the monster, is growing stronger each day, and its victims are piling up. When Violet accidentally unleashes the monster, all three characters in this book must band together with the other founders to unearth the dark truths behind their family's abilities before the Gray devours them all. So it's got kind of a magic element into it, also while set in a contemporary setting. I really enjoyed it. It's like a CW show. In case that's your jam, I would check this book out for sure. Next up is one of my favorite spooky books of all time, and that is Saw Kill Girls by Claire Legrand, another YA fantasy standalone book. This one, I went into this one with zero expectations, but came out just loving so very much. And this one we follow, it's another like kind of spooky town. It's Sawkill Rock, where a lot of girls have gone missing over the years. No one has seen them. No one's seen their bodies. It's just kind of a thing. So we follow a character named Marion, who is the new girl, and then she meets kind of two other girls that go there, and then Marion's sister goes missing, and things start happening. And it says, when girls have been disappearing for decades, stolen away by a ravenous evil no one has dared to fight until now. And it's just this is a very creepy book. Like, it was spooky. I've heard a lot of people say it was spooky. It's very graphic. It talks about things, but goodness me, did it like enrapture me. I loved it, highly recommend it. But I know this book, it's very polarizing. A lot of people love it, but there's a lot of people that like loathe it. So I think if you read it, you're going to be one or the other. You're going to be obsessed with it, or you're going to absolutely hate it, and there's no in between with it. But I loved it a ton, and so I would highly recommend it. It's spooky. It's got girls going missing. This monster kind of lurking in the background. It's got all of the check marks for like a great spooky read, in my opinion. Except as another YA book, I guess a lot of these are all YA, and that is The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffith. This is all about witches. It's not necessarily spooky, but witches. That gives you a spooky vibe right there, I think. Probably. I think so. In this book, we follow Clara, who is a witch. And in this book, witches are tied to seasons. So you can be a summer witch, a spring witch, an autumn witch, or a winter witch. I said those all out of order, but whatever. And basically, when you're, like, let's say I'm on autumn witch, because that's what I would choose. We all know this. My magic would be strongest during the autumn months, aka September, October, November. And all of my magic's kind of elemental to that season, like with leaves and things like that. I wish I could go in details, but I forgot. And Clara is an ever witch, and that's like really rare. Clara who has rare magic, who's tied to every season, so she changes with the seasons. Her magic changes. And in this book also we have a lot of climate talk, because a lot of non-magical folks are messing up with the climate, and the witches have to kind of keep that at bay. Like I'm talking about, there will be an ice storm in the middle of August, which is like, what? So the witch's job is to help kind of control and help the elements, because non-magical folks are messing it up. So it's got heavy doses of witches, but also a lot of talk about climate change and climate control. And it's a really cool book to read, especially if you're a seasonal reader. Like if you love fall, you got to read this book. If you love any season in particular, because each section is its own season, and it just was really cool. Like I said, it's not super spooky, but it's very heavily all about witches, so that's why I thought I would include it in here. Likewise with Winterwood. Also, you could also do The Wicked Deep by Sharon Shaw. Either of them are great to read near Halloween. They're both about witches. You know, when you think witches, what do you think of? Halloween. And so The Wicked Deep is probably my favorite out of the two, honestly. It's all about this town. A lot of spooky books are about towns, and how it kind of has a curse on it every year during this time. These sisters emerge, and they were brutally murdered like way back in the day, because they were tried as witches, and like they tied stones to their feet and like drowned them in the river. It's pretty traumatic. And you know, every year they come back and they inhabit the body of 3 local girls, and they lure boys to their deaths in the water. It's kind of payback. And so people are very enamored by that for some reason, and they make it like a huge festival, and they go to this town, and basically follow characters that have to deal with it. And I really, really enjoyed it. It was a fun read. Winterwood is great to read in fall, but also winter too, with the title Winterwood. Again, this is a book, follows a witch named Nora, and she lives in a cabin in the woods, and basically she sees this guy in the woods that you're never supposed to go to, because kind of the witches own it and things like that. And she brings it back to her cabin, and a big snowstorm happens, and they're stuck there, and it's very interesting. Like I said, out of the two, The Wicked Deep is definitely my favorite, and I would recommend that one particularly for the fall. Maybe save this one for more wintry stuff, but either way, if you want some witchy books, Shay Earnshaw's got you covered. Adult fantasy book is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. This is another kind of witchy book, but this one, it's been a couple years, so please forgive me, and I read it on ebook. So it's about this girl that lives in this it's like a religious village. It's all they know. Like, they don't have a lot of electronics, things like that, but they have this guy they call the prophet, who is their prophet. He is kind of the leader of this kind of village, and he has multiple wives, multiple children with multiple wives, but you know, he is the one connection they have to the Lord. And so they really believe in this, and it's really insane. It's kind of like a cult. If you want cult reads, there you go. But basically we have this character, I forget her name, that she is kind of adopted by her grandparents. Her mother has passed away. She doesn't know who her father is, and they all treat her kind of bad because she is mixed, and because she really doesn't belong in this village. And the more she learns about her mother, the more she learns that her mother was tied to these woods, because, you know, in spooky books, woods are never a good place to go. I think I even know that in general. But she learns that her mom had these ties to the woods, which is where the witches were. And so she goes in the woods, things start happening, and it kind of develops from there. Like I said, it's definitely a very cultish kind of book, but it's got the witches involved. And it is spooky in that regard. It's spooky in the fact of how people will believe things and they'll follow things. And it's very insane. But it's a very interesting book. I really enjoyed it, and it's definitely a good book to read near Halloween. The last two books I want to mention are both graphic novels. The first one is called Through the Woods, and I read this a few years ago. You guessed it, it's all about creepy woods. What do we learn in class today, folks? Is to not go in the woods alone or pretty much ever. That's my TED Talk, thank you. But basically, it's all about these woods, and there's different short stories in it like that are all about these woods and how creepy things happen. And it's very graphic, like the colors shows a lot of blood, a lot of stuff. It's not like super, super scary, but if you just want something real spooky that's visual, like that's a great book to read. And the last one is an adult graphic novel, and that is Fangs by Sarah Anderson. So this is pretty much, it's not really spooky at all, but it's a love story between a vampire and a werewolf, which I was like, sold. We all know how much I love vampires. And it's pretty much about that. It's black and white, and it's all about this woman vampire falling in love with this werewolf, and it's just obviously told near Halloween, and it's just really adorable. If you want like a romance kind of spooky book, it's a great one to read. Highly recommended. I think that a lot of people will read this fall with good reason. So there you have my list of spooky books to read near Halloween. Books I think that encompass the season and encompass the vibe and things like that. I hope you enjoyed. I've done these, like I said, I've done this video multiple times, so I'll leave them all down below. But I would love to know what books you would recommend for, you know, spooky reads, books that get you in the mood near Halloween.